Today, joining us is Gareth Mordey, CEO of Infinite Sports. Thanks so much for joining Golf Youth Sport to have a chat. I guess today we just want to chat a little bit about academies and reopening, and you've been so involved across the board. Can you tell us how academy sport kind of sits right at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for the invite. Looking forward to our chat. Academies are a real sort of fundamental part of the UAE, and especially sort of Dubai life, especially in the school and the sports scene. I've never been anywhere in the world where I've seen so many private academies and sessions in multiple sports across the sporting spectrum, and which is really good. So I think the context and the positivity is that there is a huge active population, which I think helps in every area of life, long-term activity, underlying issues, positive mindset, educational performance. I think every barometer research suggests that activity in sport helps. So from that standpoint, we're in a really good place. Where we are today, sports, Dubai Sports Council reopened sports about between a month and 6 weeks ago. Very, very positive conversations and engagement with the Dubai Sports Council. Again, if they're listening, thank you very much for the support and the help through this time. We've been very close to a number of us academies to help us through the time and through this period. It's been a tough time, but it's been a really collaborative time as well. So the Sports Council give approval for sports to restart in conjunction with the KHDA, which is really important because a lot of the private academies and sports happens in schools. So it was really important that the Sports Council and the KHDA collaborated with the reopening, and they did. So technically, we've been back to school before schools, which is interesting. So where we are today, we have in our lives, in our business, we have our sessions open. We have hundreds of children participating. We have more numbers this summer than we have ever had in any summer, which I think is the appetite to get back, plus the number of people who have stayed in Dubai and the Middle East. So that's very interesting. But we're operational, we're open, and we can't wait for the restart of our season, which is September.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the academies all kind of banded together a bit during this time, and you have kind of spoken about that before in the past. Can you tell us a little bit about how all the academies that might be competitors really tried to join forces and share ideas?
Yeah, sure. We were hit with news around midnight of February the 28th, which seems like 22 years ago, but was only a few months back. February 28th, I think it was a leap year as well, so then the 29th was an interesting day. We needed that additional day, I think, for planning. So yeah, we were informed by a number of our partner principals in schools and Sports Council who called quite late that evening, and informed us what was potentially going to happen because of the global pandemic. At the time, wasn't a pandemic; it was just a virus that was spreading through the world. Within 7 days, we were completely closed. So I think March 7th, March 8th, we were asked to stop sport, so to speak, which was devastating. But that's what we did. We adhered absolutely to the guidance and the precautionary measures. And then I think there's lots of sports academies. Let's be very fair and very frank. There's hundreds, in fact. When I arrived in Dubai in 2005, there was 3 prominent sports academies, and now I think there's more than 350 registered sports licenses, and then there's others as well. So that it's a phenomenal growth story, and that's great, and we love that. We want thousands if we can. We decided to reach out to our partners, friends, competitors, industry, and try and get around a table, which we've tried and we've done in little sporadic pockets before, but to get everybody together, the mainstay, the main players, the guys who've been there the longest maybe and the biggest, just to get around a table to understand and sort of make things a bit more consistent in everything. So we sat down, and it's hilarious because, and I'm very open about this, and I have no problem with this. We were all competitors. It's like Manchester United, Chelsea, Barcelona, Real Madrid, all sitting at a table and said, right, let's get on now and let's be friends. And that's not going to happen. So we made a little joke of that at the start and we said, listen, we will all be competitors in September and trying to fight and trying to sort of increase our own little businesses. But at this time, which was March the 15th-ish, March the 16th, at this time we have to keep the industry open. So that we had an obligation to our parents, our children, and our businesses, our staff, to work together. So we made a decision to align with a lot of things, which I thought was really, really important. We made a decision to align with policies. So you think about refund policies, you think about staff policies, you think about venue credits and refunds, and every policy and sort of document that you could think of, we spoke about, and we come up with a commonality. I'm not going to say everything was the same and we were all high-fiving and friends. It was a very difficult conversation, but at the same time it was a very needy conversation. From that, it's been incredible. From that meeting, we've created sort of a centralized WhatsApp group, and we've got communications every day, and added to that, so there's been other companies who say, oh, we couldn't make that meeting, can we jump on? So they're on there now. I think there'll be over 30, 40 providers for sure, sports companies for sure, which is great. And that then is the consistency of communication out there now. So when the KHDA give us directives, when the Sports Council give us directives, and the Sports Council have actually asked if communication can be sort of better centralized through that group as well, which is great. So again, bad times, challenging times, but sort of some needy solutions, I would say, to get us out of this. And I think, again, everything is going to make us stronger, but I think it will make the industry and the sports businesses stronger when we do eventually come out of it fully, which I've got no doubt we will, but immediately as well, where we try to ramp up that recovery.
Do you have a little bit of a timeline for when you think different steps will be made, or not necessarily when you'll come out of it fully, because that's hard to say, or it's just playing it by ear really and waiting for directives and going that way?
Yeah, so there's a couple of key moments that we had waited for. We've jumped over them hurdles and them key moments, and then there's a couple of key moments ahead. So at the start, when there's no sport, that's a simple one. There's a wall in front of you and you can't get through it or around it or over it. Then the door opens and you can reopen with certain guidelines. So all of the precautionary measures that you would experience in any industry, cinemas, restaurants, things like that. So your temperature checks, your sanitization, your masks, your gloves, etc., all those are very well established now in common practice across the world, really, but focused on the UAE. And then there's the ratios in the groups, which started very small. So 4 children to 1 coach, 4 players to 1 coach. That's extended slightly when the summer programs then open. So again, another sort of hurdle that we've jumped over as well as a group. And then the key ones moving forward are, when are those 10 to 1 camp numbers going to expand back to regular sports ratios, which for real productivity, for real children's development, they need to be in certain size groups that'll enable participation and sort of, I'm not going to say competition as in we have to play games and leagues. We do eventually, but you can get by if the sessions are sort of a little bit more competitive with a few more numbers. We would expect that September, October, if everything goes the way it's going at the moment, and that's fully understanding that anything could happen, and we're totally prepared for that. Leagues, tournaments, and events. I know that the schools are doing little, if not nothing, in term 1, and I would expect that to change in term 2 if, again, the numbers plateau the way they are. So yeah, that's technically where we are. We're waiting for September for the schools to reopen, so that's where the population sort of restarts, recharges, and then we're looking for the ratios of the sessions to increase so that we can get back to a level footing. In terms of a full long-term recovery, I think we're waiting. I think we'll be waiting for till around September 21, if again the whole scenario stays the way it is at the moment.
Yeah. And going back, I just wanted to pop back to kind of that lockdown period, and something that Infinite Sports did really well was webinars. And I really enjoyed watching them, and I think they had quite a good reception to them. Can you tell me a bit about what the reception was to them that you got from players, coaches, and just the sporting community?
Yeah, sure. We had we just made a decision at the start. It was again very reactive. I mean, it was in no plan of anybody's, I don't think, to sort of one, put sessions online, or two, put sort of webinars and CPD and sort of training online. We had in that lockdown, in the initial lockdown period, we had over sort of 10,000 views of our video content, which was really impressive. I think the subsequent 6 months before, we probably had about 10 rather than 10,000. So really, really good we looked at it as a positive as well. So how do we refresh the brand? How do we get more eyeballs on our content? How do we design content? How do we develop content? That cannot be done soon turn to, oh my God, have you seen this video? It's amazing. So really, really good. We had 5,500 young players participate in our academy sessions online, which was fantastic. And then from a webinar perspective, it was right. We think we've got the children sorted. How do we keep the adults engaged, the coaches, the management across the businesses, internally and externally? So it wasn't an exclusive sort of old boys club. This was a very much sort of, how do we put content online for the industry and for the region, and we had people logging in from every country around the world. I think we did upward of 35 webinars. We had Professor Damien Hughes, who opened them up. We had Adrian Bevington, ex-general manager of the Football Association. We had numerous professional athletes, and no plugs intended here, but all on our YouTube, all open for the public to view, and there are some really strong content within that. And we were delighted. We were delighted with the people who we could attract on. So there was a very much sort of, who do we know? Who could we contact? And sort of the people who we did contact were just so helpful. It was a bit like, oh, do you mind coming on and doing it? And anything we can do to help. And lots of these guys and girls who come on our webinars have visited the UAE before. Yeah. They understand the UAE. They travel there, whether that's for sport, professional, business, or pleasure, and they really feel. I think lots of people who've been to the UAE have an affinity with it, even if you've only been for a number of days. And they really wanted to help, and their efforts certainly didn't go unnoticed. And we've had a lot of interest since then, with sort of business sponsors, partnerships who've come online, sports councils who've said, could you get that guy back on? Could you get that lady back on? So that's been really, really positive. And we're looking forward to sort of continuing those as well moving forward.
No, fantastic. That'd be great to hear, because they were really enjoyable to watch. And yeah. I guess, so you've got Infinite Sports, you've got swimming, cricket, football, what am I missing there? Gymnastics. How do you come moving forward? How do you deal with all the different protocols that come for, obviously pools can't open in some cases, and how do you deal with all the different protocols coming through?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, we've got to, speaking sort of, I'll probably be a bit biased and a bit now, because our team's incredible. Even from the start, I mean, pre-COVID, we were on an incredible journey, upward trajectory of sort of participation, working in sort of 50+ venues, real hardcore ECA programs, academy programs, and then participation competitive sport, which we're really passionate about. We've all come through that. I think the whole business, we've got ex-Olympians, we've got ex-professionals, it's a very much sort of, we've been there and we've done it, so we know the script. The protocols post-COVID have been quite simple, because it's one for everybody. It's not that one for that one, that one for that one. The challenge has been in certain sports which are a bit more hands-on. So gymnastics for young children is a challenge, but there's ways and means around that, and our experts are seasoned pros in doing that. And again, sort of football, more team sports has been a slightly I'm going to say slightly easier, and then the guys will slaughter me, but it's slightly easier because it's rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, rule 4, about 8 to 10 protocols, and then you start your session. Yes, the sessions need to be modified, but the guys and girls are experienced enough to modify the sessions, so we're not going to cry wolf on that. And yeah, it's been very challenging, but the staff have been incredible, and it's incredible, meaning the numbers that we've put through, the attitude, the willingness to change their mindset, which has been a huge part of this period, because we've often, well, you read literature and you go on courses and do a further education, and it's all about sort of how do you move from a fixed mindset. And we are in a fixed mindset. We were in a fixed mindset because it's like boom, 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 boom. But then when something as big as this happens, it really tests people's mettle on how can they move to a sort of open mindset, change mentality, failure. Let's try something. It might not. Imagine trying a project and saying, this might not work. Yeah. It needs to, and people take confidence from, I know this is going to work, programmed, robot. And it's been very, very good and heartening, and I think it will stand us in really good stead moving forward.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Gareth, I hope everything really continues in the positive kind of way that you've explained, and hopefully we do get to see quite a bit of competition coming back, and really appreciate you chatting to Golf Youth Sport.
No problem. Anytime, Laura.
Beautiful.